In our last segment, we analyzed President Trump's recent comments about pardons and other examples of him playing fast and loose with the Constitution. Now, consensus seems to be, for anyone not caught deep in the Trump bubble, that everybody believes that the president, any president, is not above the law. It's not a monarchy, it's a democracy. Now, it's the latest wedge between the Republican Party, a party that has become a cult of personality, that according to former House Speaker John Boehner.
There is no Republican Party. There's a Trump Party. The Republican Party is kind of taking a nap somewhere.
Now, that sense that the GOP has become the party of Trump was made clear this weekend by House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. McCarthy, who's widely considered to be a top replacement pick for Paul Ryan once the Speaker retires or is pushed out, he was asked about the lies coming from the White House in an interview this weekend. And as you can see, he never answered the question, which says a whole lot about his and the grand old party's thinking.
This has gone on for more than a year. Millions of dollars has been spent. The White House has been cooperating all the way through. Everyone has looked at this as there's no collusion going forward.
Mr. Leader, I understand that those are the talking points, but this is a specific question. Are you concerned that the White House, you heard the sound bites, you saw the statement from his own lawyers, they lied? Yet, does that concern you?
They can go on with the investigation. What I was concerned most about, like most Americans, was there any collusion? There was no collusion. This has gone on for more than a year.
Now, McCarthy's answers, or lack thereof, shredded by Steve Schmidt. Now, Steve Schmidt, who you may or may not remember, he ran John McCain's presidential campaign in 2008. Listen to what he had to say about McCarthy and Republicans specifically in the House.
He disqualified himself for the speakership of the House. At the end of the day, if one of the parties wants to make a monkey the majority leader, I'm pretty indifferent to it. But the Speaker is a constitutional officer, third in line to the office of President of the United States. And what you saw was a partisan there, somebody who would do anything, complete servility to the leader, to Donald Trump, above the American Constitution, above the system of checks and balances, above the rule of law. It's disgraceful to watch it.
Now again, Schmidt, just like Boehner before him, Republicans and lifelong ones at that. As for presidential perspective into Trump, actions, lies, challenges to political and constitutional norms, here's Bill Clinton. He laid into Trump without saying the name, but you didn't have to read too much between the lines as he promoted his new book this weekend.
If there were a Democratic president and these facts were present, most people I know in Washington believe impeachment hearings would have begun already.
If there were a Democrat in power
yes.
right now.
And most people I know believe that the press would have been that hard or harder. But these are serious issues.
He's got some perspective on this, right? Well, finally, we've now heard from one of Reagan's children on what the grand old party's patron saint, if you will, would make of the Trump presidency. Patti Davis, she did not hold back. She said her father, the 40th president, would have been appalled by the actions of the 45th, adding, Reagan would be horrified at where we've come to. He would be appalled and heartbroken at a Congress that refuses to stand up to a president who not only seems ignorant of the Constitution, but who also attempts at every turn to dismantle and mock our system of checks and balances. Let's bring in our panel right now. Jeannie Zanos, a professor of political science at Iona College and also a senior advisor at the consulting firm Applied Techonomics. Dominic Carter, political journalist, author, and just back from Long Island. Joe Pinion, a Republican strategist, also GOP contender for the New York State Assembly. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. All right. Joe, I start with you. We heard of a bunch of Republican voices there that says this is not the party I grew up in. You're running for office with an R before your name. And I guess my question is, do you recognize not only the president as a Republican, but do you recognize the party that seems to be going out of its way to say, well, not much when it comes to what he's doing?
Well, I think that first and foremost, I mean, tribalism is listed amongst the four horsemen of the political apocalypse, right? And so when you start looking at the fact that you have, you know, this increasing inability of individuals to just call balls and strikes, to be able to say that these are our core tenets, and I believe that this person, irrespective of whether I think they might become the best president of the United States, or whether I think that this is an individual who might be a proud member of my party, might be doing things that are inconsistent with the things that we tout as who we are. So I think that is problematic, but I think it is born out of the reality that when you're having such a polarized society politically, people are going to appeal to their base. It's an election year. I think the sad reality is that, particularly at the national level, that the cross-section of voters who are going to be able to be compelled to look past the letter in front of people's names and be able to actually go out there and make a determination about what's best in their lives is so small that you see people really right now trying to reach for every possible vote they can to keep that base in line.
Due respect, though, I mean, yes, both parties appealed to their bases, but the Republicans are capitulating to theirs in this case. There were Democrats who voted for impeachment of Bill Clinton in the House. There were Democrats who were critical of it.
On the Bill Clinton front, because I remember it vividly, I called him a pig on the air for what he did. Now, whether I thought he should or shouldn't have been impeached or whatever else, there wasn't a disagreement about his behavior and lack of presidential respect that he had for the office with what he did. So we can't even agree anymore what's wrong. I mean, I laid out chapter and verse, the facts. The president lied through his teeth. His people lied through their teeth about meeting with Russians with ties to the Kremlin in the run-up to the election to get dirt on an opponent. And, Jeannie, I'm talking without exaggeration, or a president is talking about pardoning himself. A president is demonizing the idea of even being investigated. And the former U.S. attorney, who's his mouthpiece, is saying he could go and kill the former FBI director and there's nothing anyone could do about it. These are conversations we're having in 2018, and somehow a guy who I think will be the next Speaker of the House if they keep the House after November has trouble saying that's too far. It's crazy what we accept as this new normal of dialogue right now. You can't make it up. If somebody said, even last night, the president's going to tweet this morning that he can go pardon himself and that he's above the law, I'd say, well, even Trump wouldn't do that. I don't know where's the line anymore. But to me, it's scary. It's not funny anymore. It's scary.
Well, and I think, I think you're right to look at McCarthy, and I think, he's not the first one. Look at Paul Ryan has decided to leave rather than take on the fight. Mitch McConnell is there, has said very little. Even when his wife was attacked, the only people on the Republican side who seem to be speaking out are the people who are leaving office, and that's simply not going to be enough for the party. But the reason, of course, they're doing this is because they feel that their future in terms of the midterm is intimately tied to Donald Trump, and the base will desert them if they take him on. At least that's their fear, and so they're unwilling to do it.
Except, Dom, I've always seen, at least, I don't care who's in charge of Washington, the political parties, of which chamber, whatever. There's a rule book, right? We got a constitution. It's a rule book. Yes, it's interpretive in certain things. But I never really believed in my lifetime that if a president says, yeah, the rule of law doesn't apply to me, applies to all you other people, but me, I can do anything I want. I can pardon myself. I don't have to listen to a subpoena or indictment. Doesn't apply to me. I'm basically a king. I always believed if somebody ever tried that it would be political suicide to stand by that guy, especially a guy whose numbers are underwater and everything else. I know about the base. I know all that. But they got to figure at some point he's not going to be around, and what the heck are we going to be left with? I don't think I'm being naive when I say I can't believe. Now, I've heard some. I saw Senator Grassley today and all the rest, saying who's ever given him that advice, he should be fired. He can't pardon himself. But he's an exception today. They're saying this out loud, that the president's calling himself a king, and they don't want to say anything about it.
Well, I agree with your assessment, Richard, but are we really surprised at what's going on?
Yeah, I am. I really am.
Well,
maybe I'm naive and I haven't been paying attention.
I'm not, because this day of partisan politics has been going on for many, many years leading up to this. And at some point, you're talking about leadership in the Republican Party, but I flip this and I say to the American people, at some point, we have to look to the voter, because you wanted this experiment, you went for the argument, you went for his game. I call it a 3-card Monte, literally, because anyone that knows Trump knows what he's about. And so now we voted for him. So deal with it. Don't complain. Are you surprised that he's saying this?
You know what?
I'm not surprised.
You know what it is? I know out of anybody in the case of the House of 435, there's always going to be hacks. Always have been, always will. But just like if you're a law enforcement officer, you swear to uphold the law and to enforce the law. You swear to uphold the Constitution and everything that comes along with it.
But just to make you feel better, who has been able to stand up to Trump successfully is the judiciary to a certain extent when it has gotten there. In the case of the travel ban, for instance, or the travel pause.
You're right, Gene, but how sad is this that we're so spineless we have to hope that the courts...
But how lucky are we have a third branch there, given their decision on the Baker's case, you know, taking exception to that, but... The courts would, if he went over the top, Republicans or Democrats would stand up, I believe.
You guys are with me, right? I got to hit a break here. We're in crazy land now.
I mean, we are around the bend, but I think we're watching an experiment, right? And people don't necessarily know which way it's going to go.
Can I make it stop?
You're not enjoying it anymore?
No.
It's not fun.
Oh, God. All right. I want to jump to a quick break here, guys, and we talk about so many things, but we forget Puerto Rico. Americans in Puerto Rico, 8 months after Hurricane Maria, island still devastated, and hurricane season has now begun. Ray Ramundi, he was there soon after it hit. He joins me to take a look back and also look what's ahead as people still struggle to recover and worry about the unknown.